Hey everyone, welcome to my channel Bibbidi Bobbidi Books. My name is Ellie and today I'm going to be filming a reading vlog for The Two Towers by J.R.R. Tolkien. So I recently filmed a dedicated reading vlog for The Fellowship of the Ring, which is of course the first book in the Lord of the Rings series. And I had so much fun reading that book and filming that video. So I thought I would carry on and do a little mini series here on my channel. And today I'm going to be, of course, reading the second book and I'm so excited. I will link the first video down below in case you missed it and you're interested in watching it. But yeah, this is going to be a video that is filled with spoilers. So I do want to give you a warning. I will be discussing spoilery things in this book. I'll be talking about the events that happen and I'll also be comparing and contrasting it to the movies and things like that. So yeah, I'm so excited to get stuck into this second book and yeah. It's going to be a pretty chilled few days. I have a few days off work, which is really lovely. It's always nice when my work schedule works out that way. I haven't really taken any annual leave, but I just happen to have a few days off in a row. So I'm very excited to have a nice relaxing time. It is Danny's birthday tomorrow, so I probably won't film much tomorrow because we'll want to be, you know, spending quality time together. He is actually working during the day, but I think in the evening we're going to get pizza. And then the day after, which is Saturday, his family are coming over as well. And we're going to have like just a hangout. It's going to be quite chilled. We're going to eat some nibbly bits and have cake and stuff and celebrate his birthday. So again, I probably won't film much, but I will be reading in between times and I've got a few days off after that. So yeah, it might be a little bit sporadic, but I am going to be filming and reading this book over the next few days and I'm very excited for it. I am a little bit stressed today though, because I was supposed to go to the shop today because I have got Danny, my husband's, presents for tomorrow, but there were a few bits I needed to pick up. I needed to get some decorations. I wanted to make the house look pretty and I needed to get a cake and his card and some wrapping paper, and I was planning to do that today because he's in work and I was going to nip out to the shop, but I have stupidly left my card in the car which he has taken to work. So that's really annoying. I'm not going to be able to do that, which is such a shame. I'm going to have to try and find time tomorrow while he's at work, but I am getting my hair done. So it's going to be a squeeze to get my hair done and also to get those bits and to get back here and decorate and wrap his presents before he comes back from work. So I'm a little bit stressed about how that's all going to work out. But that's okay. Today I'm going to obviously read and start this book, but I'm also going to clean the house and get it all looking nice for when people come around. So that'll be a good use of my time. And I can listen to the audiobook whilst I do it because that's how I've been enjoying reading these books. I have the audiobook downloaded. It's the one that is narrated by Andy Serkis, who of course is the actor that played Gollum. And I loved his performance in the first book. And I'm so excited to hear him carrying on with the story. So yeah, without further ado, let's get stuck into this book and I will keep you posted with my thoughts and feelings as we go. Okay, so hey everyone, I've literally only read the first 2 chapters of this book and I already have thoughts and feelings and feel like I need to give you an update. So this book opens with Boromir's death, which is very different to in the movies. So in the movies, Boromir dies at the end of the Fellowship of the Ring, and I feel like that makes more sense to me. It feels more impactful. We actually see him getting injured, and it just feels like, you know, his whole character arc is wrapped up in that first movie, and that makes sense. Whereas in the books, it's kind of split across the first 2 books. So the first book ends with the breaking of the Fellowship. So it ends with Boromir confronting Frodo and trying to take the ring. Frodo escapes and decides that he has to go off on his own because he can't trust anyone. So he runs away with Sam and they leave on a boat to go to Mordor by themselves. And that is how the first book ends. And then the second book opens with Aragorn finding Boromir stuck through with arrows. We don't even see him getting attacked, which kind of is a bit of a strange choice because again, it just feels very sudden, very abrupt. And I feel like if I hadn't watched the movies, I probably wouldn't been as affected by Boromir's death. But bearing in mind that Tolkien did originally write The Lord of the Rings as one giant book, and it was only later that he decided to split it up. So I don't know if that's maybe why. But anyway, it opens with Aragorn finding Boromir, and Boromir lets Aragorn know that the orcs attacked and they took the halflings. Again, a little difference. There isn't the iconic Sean Bean line where Boromir says, they took the little ones, which is such a shame because that is such an iconic line in the movies. But he says something along the lines of, the orcs have taken the halflings. Aragorn tries to clarify who he means, but Boromir dies before he can explain. And again, that's a little bit of a difference between the books and in the movies, because in the movie, Aragorn knows that Frodo is going to go off on his own. He actually realizes that Frodo has made that choice. He confronts him and he says something like, I would have gone with you until the end, into the very fires of Mordor. And it's such a beautiful and moving moment. But Aragorn lets Frodo go anyway because he realizes that this is something that he has to do on his own. Whereas in the books, Aragorn doesn't realise that Frodo is going off on his own. It's only when he realises that the boat is missing that he pieces things together and realises that Frodo and Sam must have gone off. And it's when he's talking to the rest of the group that he says, you know, I would have gone with him until the end. And yeah, again, I just feel like I prefer the choice that was made in the movie. I feel like it's more impactful. Anyway, after Boromir dies, Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli are the only ones that are left, and they decide to follow after the orcs and to save Merry and Pippin. So they are on the track, they are following the trail, and they are on the heels of the orcs and travelling through Rohan. And what I love about the book, though, is that J.R.R. Tolkien has some fabulous descriptions of the environment. So I wanted to give you a read of a few quotes. So, for example, on page 422, it says, turning back, they saw across the river the far hills kindled. Day leaped into the sky. The red rim of the sun rose over the shoulders of the dark land. Before them in the west, the world lay still, formless and grey. But even as they looked, the shadows of night melted. The colours of the waking earth returned, green flowing over the wide meads of Rohan. The white mists shimmered in the water vales, and far off to the left, 30 leagues or more, blue and purple stood the white mountains, rising into peaks of jet, tipped with glimmering snows, flushed with the rose of morning. I mean, come on, that is just absolutely stunning writing and really paints a picture of, you know, the world and the nature and just Rohan being absolutely beautiful. And something that I've noticed as well is that Tolkien uses a lot of personification when he's talking about the environment. So for example, in that quote, he says, the sun rose over the shoulders of the dark land. And it's just something that I've noticed he does quite a lot. And that's interesting because I think that the environment itself is almost like its own character, its own kind of person in a way. And yeah, I wonder if that's why he's chosen to use those kinds of descriptions when he's talking about the earth and the land. Another quote that I really liked that I wanted to share with you is on page 424. So this says, at the bottom, they came with a strange suddenness on the grass of Rohan. It swelled like a green sea up to the very foot of Emin Muil. The falling stream vanished into a deep growth of cresses and water plants, and they could hear it tinkling away in green tunnels down the long, gentle slopes towards the fens of Entwash Vale far away. They seemed to have left winter clinging to the hills behind. Here the air was softer and warmer and faintly scented, as if spring was already stirring and the sap was flowing again in herb and leaf. Legolas took a deep breath, like one that drinks a great draught after long thirst in barren places. Ah, the green smell, he said. It is better than much sleep. Let us run. Oh, again, just absolutely stunning. You know, even describing the scent of the air, it just paints such a beautiful picture of Rohan. And what I also like is that we obviously have this beauty, you know, these people traveling across these grassy plains. But then when the orcs are mentioned, they are very much kind of ruining this beauty and marring the land. So for example, a little bit further down on the same page, it says, "Orcs tramped its ugly slot. The sweet grass of Rohan had been bruised and blackened as they passed." Again, the choice of bruised and blackened, like it's literally as though the orcs are injuring the environment. And again, I just really appreciate those subtleties with the language that was used. You know, the fact that we have this theme of the orcs representing industrialization versus kind of nature and things, because J.R.R. Tolkien was kind of like a bit of a hippie. He loved nature and things like that, and that's kind of the inspiration for these books. And I like the fact that we then have that imagery of, these beautiful descriptions of the environment, and then as soon as the orcs show up, they're just damaging it and they're bruising the grass. And yeah, I just really appreciate that. Anyway, Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli have been on the hunt for Merry and Pippin. They end up being approached by riders of Rohan who surround them very much like in the movie, and the riders of Rohan let them know that they have chased down the orcs and there was a battle, they killed them all and they've burned their bodies. And so Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli go after to where they burned the bodies to search and see if there's any evidence that Merry and Pippin are still alive somehow. And that is where chapter 2 finishes off. So yeah, I've been rambling on for ages and I've literally only read the first 2 chapters, I'm sorry. But yes, I am enjoying the writing, I'm enjoying being back in this world, I'm enjoying Andy Serkis's performance, and I can't wait to carry on. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'll speak to you a little bit later. Hey everyone, so I'm in the car. I'm about to head to Asda to go and get some birthday bits for Danny for tomorrow. I did actually find some cash that I had hidden away that I had forgotten about. So that's great because that means I can go and I can use that to get his cake and card and wrapping paper, the essentials. It's annoying that I don't have more because I was planning on doing a bigger shop and getting some foodie bits for the weekend, but I don't have enough money for that. But at least I can go and get the essentials, which is great because I was really worried that I wouldn't have time to do that. So yeah, I'm about to head to the shop. In terms of reading updates, I've literally only read one more chapter. I've read chapter 3, and that's from Merry and Pippin's perspective. So we do actually see through Pippin's point of view what happened to Boromir. So he recalls that Boromir was obviously attacked by all the orcs, and he actually slaughters a hefty number of orcs before he goes down, which is pretty epic of him. But Pippin actually gets knocked out before he sees Boromir die, so he doesn't realise that he's gone. And yeah, Merry and Pippin get captured obviously by the orcs and they have been taken away. But what I really like about this chapter is it's the first time that we see Pippin kind of showing his worth, really, because up until this point he's been a little bit useless, to be honest. He hasn't been particularly helpful. He's been quite juvenile, and this is the first time that he is in, a really deadly situation, and he's pretty resourceful. He manages to break the bonds around his hands, and he doesn't flee straight away. He stays because he doesn't want to abandon Merry, and he realizes that he doesn't know where he is, so it wouldn't be that helpful to run away. But he, makes use of opportunities as they arise. He figures out why the orcs have them captive and why they haven't killed them, because they think one of them might have the ring, and he manages to help break Merry free. And the two of them escape into the forest. So that's pretty cool of Pippin. He showed his worth, I think, in this chapter, which was nice to see. And yeah, obviously the orcs get slaughtered by the riders of Rohan, but Merry and Pippin slip away just before that happens. And they go into the forest. And I'm very excited because the next chapter is called Treebeard. So I think we're going to finally meet some Ents, which I'm so excited for. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the next chapter. But anyway, I'm going to head to the shop now. And then I'm going to come back, wrap Danny's present, and do some more reading, and I'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Hey everyone, so it has been a little while since I last caught up with you. I've wrapped Danny's presents, I've cleaned the house, and I have done a ton of reading, so I wanted to catch you up. So I have read the next 3 chapters. So chapter 4 was the chapter with Treebeard. So Merry and Pippin fled into the Fangorn forest and they end up meeting the Ent Treebeard, and they travel with him for a little while, and basically Treebeard just tells them a whole load of history about the Ents, and we find out that the Ents are mad at Saruman because Saruman and the orcs are cutting down the forest and destroying the trees. And we also find out, you know, about the Ents' history, and we find out that there aren't any Ent children because they have lost the Ent wives, which I think is really funny that they've just lost the wives and that's why they are no longer reproducing. But yeah, anyway, the Ents then have this big meeting and they decide eventually to go and rise up against Saruman because they want to defend their forests. So yeah, I enjoyed that chapter, although I thought it was really funny because Andy Serkis is an amazing voice actor and he puts on this amazing voice for Treebeard and for the Ents, and the Ents speak really slowly and in this really deep sort of creaky voice, and he does it so well, but it's such a long chapter and there's so much information, and I found that I just kept putting up the speed of the audiobook. I kept like upping it throughout that chapter because it was so slow. But yeah, it was fun hanging out with Treebeard and that. But anyway, moving on from there, we then are joined back with Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli, and they go into Fangorn Forest because obviously they are wanting to follow and try and find Merry and Pippin, and they end up bumping into Gandalf. So Gandalf, they see as a cloaked figure, and initially they think it's Saruman again, but Gandalf reveals himself and they're obviously really pleased to see him. Gandalf explains to them what happened when he fought the Balrog. He's now clad in white. He is the White Rider. He's incredibly powerful now, and yeah, Gandalf basically tells them that Merry and Pippin are safe and they're with the Ents, and he feels it's more pressing for Aragorn and the gang to go to King Theoden. So Gandalf, Aragorn, Legolas and Gimli travel to is it the Golden Halls? Is that what it's called? The place where King Theoden is. And they realise that he is being manipulated by Wormtongue. So Wormtongue is like whispering in his ears and spreading misinformation and filling him with despair. And so when they see Theoden, he is like wizened and old beyond his years. But Gandalf basically cures him. And it's quite different from in the movies. In the movies, it's quite aggressive. Gandalf basically kind of uses his magic to like pull out the evil in him. Whereas it's a bit different in the book. In the book, Gandalf lets in some light and says, "My friend, you have been in shadows for too long." And he encourages him to step outside and to look across his land. And it's stepping outside and looking across the fields of Rohan that kind of cures him. And I like that because it's a bit more gentle. And again, it's that idea that nature is healing. And, you know, Gandalf gives him his old sword and that gives him strength again. And Gandalf basically convinces King Theoden to go to war against Saruman to protect his people against that threat. And so he does that. He basically encourages all the riders of Rohan to go off into battle, and he leaves his daughter Eowyn, who we meet for the first time. He leaves her in charge of his people whilst they ride off to war. And that is the end of that chapter. So yeah, that is where I'm at. I have read a fair amount today. I've actually made a really big chunk into this book, so I'm very pleased. But I'm going to stop reading now because my brain is starting to go a bit wobbly from doing all the reading. So I am going to chill out now. I'm going to go make some dinner. And Danny and I are probably going to just watch some TV or something this evening. And then I will catch up with you tomorrow. Good morning, everybody. We are in the car. It is early. I've got out of bed and come out this morning because I have a hair appointment, which is much needed. Look how bad my roots are. So this is the before, and I guess I'll show you the after. Okay, and just like that, I am back from the hairdressers. I no longer have horrendous roots, which is so great. And she put a nice wave through it and everything. So yeah, I'm really happy. It's so much better than it was, and I feel so much more like fresh. But I was in there for ages, but that's okay. Oh, sorry if the sound is a little bit off in this clip, by the way. I forgot to take my microphone because I left in a bit of a rush. So sorry if the sound quality is a bit funny. But yeah, I'm pleased to have had my hair done. I did try and do some reading in there, but the next chapter was the battle at Helm's Deep, and it just wasn't the vibe to be reading about Helm's Deep and the battle like in a hair salon while they're blasting like pop tunes. So I ended up putting it down, but that's okay. Hopefully I'll get a chance to read a little bit more later on. But anyway, I am now going to head to M&S because it's Danny's birthday today, and tomorrow we've got his family coming around for the afternoon, and we're going to do like picky bits and just have some nice nibbles for everybody to enjoy. And M&S do the best party bits, so I'm going to head there now and pick up the goods and then head home and decorate the house before Danny finishes work. And then tonight I think we're just going to get pizza and hang out and just have a very chilled one. So I probably won't film much more today, but I'll obviously keep you posted as and when I read more of my book. Hey, so it's been a while since I last checked in with you. I think the last time I spoke to you was Friday, which was actually my husband's birthday, and he was out working during the day, so I went and got my hair done, and then I came back and decorated the house a little bit, and then when he came home from work, we just ordered pizza and we watched a movie. We watched Nosferatu, which was very cool, and yeah, we just had a really chilled, lovely, relaxing evening. And then the next day on Saturday, we had his family over and we had like a buffet and we just hung out and chatted, and it was really lovely, but I obviously didn't want to get the camera out. And yeah, today is Sunday. In between sort of family times, I did do a bit of reading. So I have actually now made it to the second part of this book, which is called Book 4. So if you don't know, these books are actually split into multiple books. So I've finished the first section, which is all with Aragorn and that lot. And I think we're now going to jump in with Frodo and Sam, which will be nice because you always think of Frodo as being the main character really of Lord of the Rings, and we haven't seen him yet. And I'm like over halfway through the book, so I'm excited to get stuck into the next section. But I wanted to catch you up a little bit. So since I last spoke to you, I've read the chapter Helm's Deep. So we had the battle at Helm's Deep, and I will admit, I don't think action is Tolkien's strong suit, to be honest with you. You know, I think it's really difficult because in the movie, the battle at Helm's Deep takes up a significant amount of time. It's incredibly cinematic and, you know, it's really tense and you really build up to this epic battle. Whereas in the book, the Battle of Helm's Deep only takes place during one fairly short chapter and it's all over quite quickly. So it feels pretty anticlimactic compared to the movie. But, you know, there were some moments that I liked. I liked the banter between Gimli and Legolas as they're keeping count of the number of orcs that they're killing and things like that. But it just didn't feel like the stakes were as high. And I think that's because we didn't have as much build up, but also because, you know, the women and children weren't at Helm's Deep. So in the movies, they are kind of holed up in Helm's Deep. So if the orcs break through, then that's obviously a big threat to the women and children as well. Whereas in the books, the women and children stay behind and it's only the soldiers that go to face the orcs at Helm's Deep. And yeah, it's just over very quickly. Obviously Gandalf pops up at the end and kind of saves the day, and it all just feels a little bit anticlimactic. So I wasn't super impressed with that chapter. But then following the battle, the gang go to Isengard, and I thought it was really funny when they met up with Merry and Pippin. So of course everybody has been chasing after Merry and Pippin. They've been really concerned for their safety, and then it's just really hilarious that when they eventually find them at Isengard, they're just hanging out. They're kind of tipsy on wine and they're smoking their pipe weed and they're just chilling out and laughing. And you know, Gimli is like, "What the hell, man? We've been really worried about you. We've been chasing after you and you're just here making merry." And I just thought that was really funny. So yeah, I liked that moment. And Merry and Pippin basically explain what happened at Isengard, because when Aragorn, Gimli, Legolas, Gandalf, and Theoden arrive at Isengard, it's in ruin. So the fires of Isengard, kind of the industrial area, has all been sort of swamped, and there was basically a huge battle that had taken place between the Ents and Isengard, which we don't see. It happens off page, but we hear about it through, I can't remember if it's Merry or Pippin's perspective. He kind of recounts what happened. Anyway, then the gang confront Saruman because he is hiding in his tower. So he hasn't died during the battle with the Ents, but he is still sort of in his tower hiding away. And that was actually a really cool scene. I really liked that. Saruman was really manipulative. So I love the way that's described in the book, the way that he changes his voice and how he tries to coerce people into joining with him. And he kind of takes his turn sort of talking to different characters and trying to bend their will and get them on his side. And it was just done really well in the book, and also really well performed by Andy Serkis. The way that he changes his voice, the way that he has this kind of, you know, persuasive voice at times. Then when he gets angry, it's really scary. It was just so well done in the audiobook, so I really enjoyed that. And I also really enjoyed Theoden in this scene as well. There was this really cool moment where Theoden stands up against Saruman and stands his ground, and it really showed his strength. And I really like that we're seeing more of King Theoden in the book, because he's actually a really cool character, and I feel like we don't see as much of him in the movies. So I did quite like that. And then, of course, Gandalf kind of defeats Saruman. He banishes him from the Order of Wizards, and he breaks his staff, and Saruman kind of hides away in his tower again. And just before the gang leave Isengard, the crystal ball thing, I forget what it's called, but it drops from the tower, and Gandalf gathers it up. And then, of course, we have that iconic scene where Pippin steals the crystal ball thing from Gandalf, and he looks into it, and it's really scary. And they basically figure out that that is how Saruman had been communicating with Sauron, and how Sauron had been kind of corrupting Saruman. And it also sets off the chain of events where Sauron sees Pippin through the crystal ball, and he thinks that he's Frodo because he's a hobbit, and he sends a Nazgul after him. And that is where that book ends. So yeah, that's where we're up to. And yeah, I'm excited to carry on. I'm excited to see Frodo and Sam, and I'm also excited to see Gollum, especially because I'm listening to the audiobook as well as reading this physically, and Andy Serkis obviously was Gollum in the movies, so I'm very excited to hear his performance, and yeah, I'm looking forward to carrying on. Anyway, I've been talking your ear off for a while, so I'm going to go now, and we're going to head into town and do some shopping. We're going to go to some charity shops. We're on the hunt for some more furniture pieces for our house, because if you don't know, we fairly recently moved into a new house, and we're still you know, needing to furnish it and stuff. So I'm looking forward to going and having a little mooch around the shops, and then coming back and probably doing some painting or something, because the weather's not particularly nice, and that seems like a cozy activity to do. So that's my plans for the day, and I'll catch up with you later. Hey everyone, so it is the next day and I'm feeling quite anxious this morning because I have a blood test later, and for some reason I always just get really anxious before these appointments, which is silly because I know it's absolutely fine once I'm there. You know, it's no big deal. I've done them before and it's been absolutely fine, but I don't know, I just always work myself up into a little bit of a state. So I'm a bit of an anxious ball of energy this morning, but I had a lovely day yesterday. We went to Chester and we had a little look around the shops and we went into some charity shops and we did find some pieces of furniture for our new home, which is very exciting. I just love going to those kinds of shops because you find such unique stuff. You find vintage things, you know, pre-owned, pre-loved stuff, and all for reasonable prices, and you're helping out a charity as well. So it's a win-win, and yeah, we found some really lovely pieces, so I'm very excited for that. And then I came home and did some reading, and I've actually read quite a lot, I think, since I last spoke to you. So I thought I'd better catch you up. Hang on, let me just find a place to put you down so we can chat properly. Okay, so since we last spoke, I have read quite a few chapters. So I'm now on book 4, which is kind of the second half of the Two Towers book. So we're back with Frodo and Sam. And the first chapter of book 4, we're basically on the road with Frodo and Sam as they're traveling to Mordor, and they are being followed by Gollum. And then Frodo actually confronts Gollum and convinces him to become their guide. So he makes Gollum swear on the ring that he won't do anything bad. And Gollum promises to be very good, which is quite sweet of him actually. And yeah, Gollum is such an interesting character because he is so divided, like literally his personality is split into two people. So we have Smeagol, who is kind of like who he was before, and then we have Gollum, who is the part of him that has been corrupted by the ring. And he switches back and forth between the two of them, and he talks to himself, and he's always struggling with this internal conflict on what to do. But, you know, he doesn't want the ring to fall into Sauron's hands. So for that reason, he decides to help Frodo and Sam, because if they get captured, if they fail on their mission, then that means that the ring is going to be taken away forever and it's going to go into the hands of Sauron. So he'd rather help them than not. But then at the same time, there is that piece of him that does want to take it for himself. So yeah, Sam is still very distrusting of Gollum, but I like that Frodo kind of sees the good in Gollum. You know, I think Frodo can kind of relate to him because he understands the weight of the ring and how it can affect you, and I think he feels sorry for him for that reason. But I also feel like because Frodo actually talks to him with some compassion, it means that Gollum is more likely to show that Smeagol side of him and for that side to come out, because he's being treated, you know, with a bit more respect, and he hasn't ever had that for a long time. And we also see some interesting moments where Gollum is afraid. So for example, when they first find Gollum, they tie his hands up and he gets really panicky. And I think that shows kind of his twisted past, you know, the fact that he has been imprisoned before, he's been tortured. And so, you know, he has PTSD, I guess, from that kind of thing. And we see that panic and fear from him, and it does make you feel a little bit sorry for him. But anyway, Gollum decides to become their guide, and chapter 2 is when he leads them through the Dead Marshes, and we see the land getting more and more perilous, more and more evil. And I feel like it becomes clearer that Frodo and Sam would never have made it on their own. They really do need Gollum because he is able to show them a safe path to go on. You know, I feel like if they didn't have him, there's no way they would have got through those marshes. They would have been lured by those creepy flame light things, or they just wouldn't have been able to find a way to get through. Then we have chapter 3, which is when they finally arrive at the gates of Mordor, but they realize that they can't just walk through the gates of Mordor. That's impossible. They will definitely get captured. And so, you know, there is this little bit of a loss of hope. But then Gollum says that there is another path, a secret path that they can take. And so he decides to take them on a kind of roundabout route to get into Mordor. And then we have chapter 4, which is called Of Herbs and Stewed Meat, which I really love. I really enjoyed this one actually. It's one of my favourite chapters, funnily enough, which is strange considering it's literally just Sam cooking up a meal for Frodo. But it was such a sweet and tender moment. There was a moment where Sam sees Frodo sleeping and he realises that he's starting to develop lines on his face just from the burden of having to carry the ring. And it's really taking its toll on Frodo, both physically and mentally. And, you know, Sam sees this happening to his friend and feels so sorry for him. But he also realizes how much love he has for his friend. And it was just such a sweet moment. And so he decides to cook up this stew to try and build him up a little bit. And he sends Gollum off to go and capture some rabbits for the stew. And he makes the stew using some of the herbs from the land. And it's just a little moment of grounding, you know, in amongst their adventure. And it's a moment where we realize that Frodo and Sam, you know, they aren't these heroes. They aren't, you know, soldiers with loads of experience. They're just two hobbits, and, you know, they're missing home and they are seeking the comforts of a nice meal. And it just makes you realize, you know, that they are just ordinary in a way. And it's just a really lovely moment, I think, a nice grounding moment in their quest. And so I really enjoyed that. And also there was some funny back and forth banter between Sam and Gollum, because obviously Gollum doesn't like his meat cooked. He likes to eat it raw, and he thinks that it's hideous what Sam is doing to the meat. And it's just funny seeing them sort of rubbing up against each other. It makes for quite a funny dialogue. So yeah, I really, really enjoyed that chapter, and that is where I am up to. So yeah, I am now probably going to pace around anxiously until my appointment, and then I'm going to come back and do some reading, and I will fill you in once I have finished the book. Exciting! Hey, so it is much later now, and I can confirm I did survive my blood test. It was absolutely fine. I don't know why I worked myself up so much, because it was absolutely fine. So I'm glad that's done and out the way. And yeah, since then I've come home, I've done some houseworky bits, and I've just had my tea, and I have now finished The Two Towers. So I thought I'd better pop on here and give you an update and tell you about my final thoughts. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. It was so fun being back in this world and with these characters. I think the last time I spoke to you was when Frodo, Sam and Gollum were on the road to Mordor. And shortly after I spoke to you, we end up running into Faramir, who is of course Boromir's brother. And can I just say, Faramir is such a stand-up guy in the books. He's so noble, he's so honourable, you know, he's not out for glory, he doesn't kill unless he has to, and he's just intelligent and just an all-round great guy. And I feel like that's not necessarily the case in the movies. I feel like the movies did him dirty a little bit. I don't know, I guess I just didn't find him as memorable in the films. And, you know, there were some moments where he was tempted to use the ring for himself. And, you know, he was a little bit snarky towards Sam in the movies. And he's just not like that at all in the books. He's just an all-round good egg. And I just really enjoyed his character. So, yeah, I love the scenes with Faramir. And, yeah, Faramir takes Sam and Frodo into this cave behind this beautiful waterfall. And they have a chat. His people end up finding Gollum splashing about in a pool, and they're tempted to kill him, but Frodo convinces them not to harm him. And Faramir decides to let the hobbits and Gollum go to complete their journey. So after having a good meal and a good chat, they end up back on the road again. Gollum leads them up the stairs to Shelob's lair, and yeah, one thing that I was surprised by actually is the iconic scene where Gollum frames Sam by sprinkling on crumbs of Lambeth bread on his shirt isn't actually in the book, which I was really surprised by. They just made that up for the movie. So yeah, I was surprised by that. I kept waiting for that moment to happen, and it doesn't in the books. But then, yeah, they enter into Shelob's lair. Frodo gets attacked by the big scary spider thing. Sam thinks he's dead, and it's all very intense. And there was a moment where Sam is with Frodo, who he thinks has died, and he says something along the lines of, "Please don't go somewhere I can't follow you." And that just broke my heart. It was so sad. And yeah, Sam has this big internal discussion. He's not sure what to do with himself, and he decides to carry on the mission by himself. So he takes the ring, he starts to head off, but then he notices some orcs come. The orcs take Frodo's body, so he is mad. He decides to follow. He puts on the ring, he chases after them, and he overhears them talking and realizes that Frodo isn't dead. And that is how the book ends. What a great time this book was. I overall had a really positive experience with this one. I do think there were some issues with pacing, and I think that is in part because it's split into two halves, whereas I feel like it would be a bit better, a bit more of an enjoyable and quicker read if we were splicing between Frodo and Sam and the rest of the Fellowship. Because, yeah, there were some moments where it did feel like it dragged a little bit. So I can definitely see why they did that in the movie. And yeah, but all in all, I had a great time. My only other sort of complaint, if you can call it that, is that I don't think the action scenes are particularly great in these books. But that being said, there were some fantastic descriptions, particularly of settings, of the environments, of the world. It was great hearing a little bit more lore about the world as well. And yeah, I'm just very excited to continue reading this series and to finish out with the final book. I will be doing another reading vlog for the final book if you're interested. So please do subscribe if you're interested. And yeah, let me know if you've read this book, what your thoughts were. Did you like it? I'd love to have a chat with you in the comment section. As always, don't forget to like this video if you did like it, subscribe if you want to see some more from me, and I guess I'll see you next time with another video. Bye!